Yeah, if you could just go through the jargon a little bit and make it more clear. The gentleman here said that they have such and such assets. Can you distinguish between assets and equity? And is this actually leveraged from a smaller amount, or does it represent your real standing gain?
Well, as a credit union, it really defines how much of our members' business we have. For us, we've got credit unions. Credit unions cannot sell stock. All of our stock is shares that our members, it's our members' deposits, basically. So for us, we measure ourselves for comparative purposes. Total assets is just, it's primarily our assets are going to, as Terry said, how much of theirs is, it's loans. It's that we don't lend out, we do invest. And then we have what's left asset-wise is just, it's our building and our equipment and that type of thing. Unlike for-profit banks, credit unions, we can't sell stock. So our equity is simply the accumulation of our earnings over time. That's just kind of our buffer against a rainy day, and boy, our buffers have been tested over the past couple of years. Does that, so that's, and I'm a CPA by trade, so if I start getting into jargon, I'm prone to it.
Can you just contrast this, say, with a Morgan Stanley or a Goldman Sachs, which have very different equity and assets?
I think the easiest explanation is that out of our member deposits, I'm going to say that we're 140 just to keep round numbers. $100 million are in deposits. Out of that, we also have about $6 million that are is the assets that we have in our furniture, fixtures, our buildings and stuff like that. We have about $12 million that over the 70 years that I talked about, we have about $12 million that is our members' equity in the credit union. And then on the other side of the balance sheet, you have your loans and your other investments. So as far as equity goes, I can't sell you a share and say this is my equity or this is my capital. I have to earn all that. Does that make sense?
So it sounds like equity is not a good word to use here. Not useful, not relevant.
I think that there are different definitions of equity, and in our particular case, it's our net worth. It's our net earnings over the course of time. And we, as all financial institutions, have to have a certain amount of equity or net worth in order to make the regulators happy. Anything, I think it's over, you have to have at least 5%. Currently, we're at 8.5%. So that does show, in our case for the credit unions, the equity is a measurement of our financial strength. What is it above and beyond what are normal assets and liabilities? What do we have? Once everything has been sold and everything is paid out, how much money is left would be left at the end of the day to be distributed amongst the membership?
The first speaker mentioned that it's best to use cash instead of credit whenever possible, which I completely agree with that. I did everything I could to pay off the one credit card that I had. And years ago, I haven't touched it since. I filed away against more. But during the panel discussion, credit scores, FICO scores have come up several times, or a few times. And as I understand it, if you have a credit account that you've had for years, and then you close it, then that's detrimental to your FICO score, which even with local economy, you'd still need that. You'd still want to have a FICO score to be as good as it can be. So as far as just practical application of moving our money, what I'm thinking about is I was thinking about, okay, moving my checking, moving my savings, maybe even close, close off my line since, yes, I mean, you know, as far as, and I'm not asking like by personal account, I'm just saying if we're telling people to move their money, and as far as the practical way of how to do that, you know, would we be, you know, letting ourselves in for, you know, some unexpected side effects?
Credit scores are a little bit of a mystery. Not anybody knows exactly what makes a credit score a credit score, but what it is it summarizes your entire credit bureau and it gives it a score. Lenders use that to make future credit decisions to say, okay, is this a good borrower, is this not a good borrower, and they use that to see how have they paid their bills in the past. Have they been successful in paying their bills and paying them on time and making good on their promise? And we use that information to lend money to them again. I know a lot of times if you have a credit card and you're not using it, it is detrimental in the sense that they want to see how you made your payments on time. Well, if you don't have a balance, you have no payments to make. So it's not, it doesn't help your credit score, so to speak. They want to see that you are making your payments on time, and obviously in order to do that, you have to have a balance on something. So,
Yeah, but I mean, as far as like if you close the account totally, then it kind of...
it shows up differently on there whether the consumer closed the account or whether the bank closed the account. So, you know, again, it's one of those things that we would take a look at and say, okay, well, you know, they don't have a credit card anymore because the consumer chose to close it. And look at the, you know, the amount they have in savings and that kind of thing when you look at the big picture. So.
But I mean, I'm sorry, I just meant as far as like the FICO is used for so many things. You know, tennis swings or
Yeah.
non-shooting, things like
Yeah.
that.
And there are other ways besides credit cards that you can build credit. I mean, if you, as Terry was talking about, I wonder whether if you use one of the lines of credit at ICU, whether that would show up on a credit score, or then if you wanted to get a loan through ICU, whether that would go on sort of a report.
Well, as we were talking about, the whole FICO score is a mystery. Sometimes I think that there's somebody in there that has dice that are sitting in the back room going, oh, those look like good numbers. Because I've seen over the course of time, some people's credit scores have gone up, some have gone down with the closing of credit cards. I think the main thing is that not to have more out there than you can use. Having a wallet full of credit cards that have high lines of credit available is not only putting you at risk as far as spending too much, but it's also putting you at risk for identity theft and for having fraud being done on your accounts.
Yeah, but I mean, as far as, and I know other people have things, but what I'm trying to get at is like, you know, it affects like your credit history,
Yeah.
you know, right? Because I know there are things of like your ratio between how much credit you have available and how much you actually use, and the length of your credit history. Is closing your oldest account, is that detrimental to you?
I couldn't answer that again. I don't have their dice.
Well,
If you have it marked, if you make sure that when you close the credit card that you say, put in this statement that the credit card was closed at the request of the customer, that should help, and then if it looks like the credit score was altered, to do some kind of dispute, basically. But it should not affect your credit score negatively if the credit card was closed at the request of the consumer.
okay, thank you.